We've moved from Pacifica time and we're actually ahead of time now, so well done. Right.
Sugar cubes.
We next have, the next item on the agenda is apologies, and I have received apologies from Councillor Dick Quacks. Are there any other apologies?
Early departure.
And Councillor Fletcher for
early
departure.
And Councillor,
and
Early departures.
early departure from Councillor Collins. So anything further? If not, I move that we accept the apology from Councillor Collins and Councillor Fletcher for early departure and from Councillor Quacks for absence. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Oh, sorry, seconded. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clough, for drawing my attention to that. Carried. Declarations of interest. Is there any councillor that has an interest, a personal interest in any of the issues that are under discussion today? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. We have two sets of minutes for confirmation. The minutes of the 14th of December of last year and yesterday's minutes, the 21st of February 2018. Councillor Fletcher, I think you foreshadowed that you wanted to raise something under the minutes of the 14th of December.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Your Worship. In the matter of the minutes of the 14th of December, I am really just wanting some guidance from you, because either the minutes were incorrect or the delegations have been breached with regards to agenda item 10, and that was the delegations around the America's Cup. And I would really just like your guidance on that, because I understood that the minutes were quite specific around the delegations with the Wynyard Basin option. And from my perspective, I've got no preference over, but I'm interested in process. And so really what I would like to understand is where this sits in terms of delegations, and whether or not there should have been a report on this next governing body, because I notice that there is nothing on the governing body today about the America's Cup, and some time has elapsed. Resource consents have been lodged, people are making submissions, and yet there has been no formal report back to this council. So that may be a matter for extraordinary business, or maybe the minutes are incorrect around the issue of delegation, so I just seek your guidance.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher, and thank you for raising that matter with me yesterday. I have in my hands the minutes of the 14th of December, and the relevant minutes are C and D. C reads, note that the Mayor and the Chief Executive were given delegated authority under Resolution GB 2017-145 to continue negotiations with the Crown and Emirates Team New Zealand, and D, delegate authority to the Mayor and Chief Executive to complete negotiations and to lodge the resource consent. I have reported, and I know that you were at the two meetings that I've held for councillors to give progress reports on the America's Cup, that the negotiations are still, at this moment, ongoing. There are a number of different options, and in any negotiations, of course, you start off with a position, which is the one that was moved by the governing body, and that was our starting position in those negotiations. Other parties have then brought in new positions, new information, and the negotiation has to have some degree of flexibility to proceed in that way. We have, of course, lodged the resource consent around the original preference of council. That was lodged on the 15th of January, but some things have changed along the way, which all councillors were invited to meetings where we have explained Stolthaven moving, an option opening up that might have been cheaper than the original option, but still based on the Wynyard Basin. Team New Zealand has yet another option that we're examining at the moment. There is no completion to that process. When there is, it will come back here. But my belief is that we have maintained our negotiating stance in accordance with C and D in the minutes of the 14th of December. maybe if I just ask the Chief Executive, as the other party mentioned in the minutes, to make some comment.
Thanks, Mayor Goff. So we're in a tricky place in that we do not have an agreed option that all three parties to this negotiation have signed up to. And should that be different to the Wynyard Basin, then there would be a report to the governing body, because it's your decision to move away from the Wynyard Basin in a formal manner to another option. We're not in a position to bring that to you yet, because as Mayor Goff said, negotiations continue. We're mindful that the submission period for the currently notified suite of consents closes on 28 February. And this is not an announcement, it's a foreshadowing that the applicant may well seek to have that submission date extended, because we will not have concluded negotiations by, I think it's safe to say we won't have concluded them by Wednesday of next week. So there might be an extraordinary governing body meeting before the next scheduled meeting in March, and it just depends on the progress that we're able to make as one of the parties to the three that are trying to negotiate an agreed compromise.
I thank you sincerely, Your Worship, and to the CEO for clarifying that the minutes are correct and my understanding was correct. I was concerned that the media release that went out, which started new deal makes Wynyard hybrid proposal viable, I just suppose that when you talk about deals, people assume that parties are working together. I guess it would be helpful to, if there is the opportunity prior to an extraordinary meeting, to be able to receive some briefings, to give confidence to those of us who have actually been involved with these sort of events in the past and know how much time it takes to prepare, that sufficient time is going to be allowed to make sure that this event can be executed, allowing all parties to have the correct amount of time in preparation.
Thank you, Councillor. I was quite deliberate in calling the two meetings we've had already to give confidential briefings to councillors, because I believe that you all have the right to be kept informed. As the Chief Executive has pointed out, there are three parties to the negotiations, and to conclude the negotiations we need agreement from three parties. That inevitably involves compromise from each of the parties, and I've set out the criteria pretty clearly of what we're looking for in terms of the outcome for Auckland, and the need to have regard to environmental factors, the need to have regard to the financial cost, the need to have regard to the needs of Team New Zealand, and the need to have regard to the legacy that's left for Auckland. So I absolutely will, once we have something further to report and we've got the three parties focused on one outcome, take that back to a discussion, probably informal in the first instance, and then if the agreement is reached between the three parties, that of course will come back to the governing body for formal report.
So we will have visibility around the viability of the bases for those teams that we know at this stage that will want to participate, and will we have visibility in and around the financial context to some of this material? Because at the moment, on those 2 points, I feel I don't have any information at all.
We'll give you as much visibility as we can. The assumption right at the beginning of this process was that we needed to prepare for 8 teams. There seems to be a little bit of uncertainty about whether it's 8 or less than 8 at this stage, but we really can't tell you for sure. That's only Team New Zealand will know when the closing date comes, or hopefully a little bit earlier than that, because that's still some months down the track, so that we know what we're planning for. The finances too, I think, are a bit of a movable feast. Different proposals are put up, different costings are made, but when you're at that negotiating phase and you haven't done all of the definitive work, it's hard to know what the concrete figures actually will be. So we're being cautious, and even in that press statement, that was not signalled as a deal. It said explicitly that this agreement had not yet been reached with Team New Zealand, and Team New Zealand has come up with some 11th hour suggestions that I think are worthy of looking at. You're never going to get a perfect agreement that suits each party 100%. That's why I say in the end there'll be some degree of compromise to try to meet the needs of all three parties to the extent that that can be done. But we will be coming back to you, yes. And
you'll be coming back on the point that, as I understand it, and if you go back in history, the last time that we had a defence, it was working with Louis Vuitton, and the actual defence itself for Team New Zealand this time is really just on the sailing of the 2 weeks. So the events prior to that are in the hands of others. So are these matters being factored in the requirements of those parties?
To the extent that there's certainty, and we have to rely on information we get from Team New Zealand about that, including when the first teams might be arriving, because I think there's been a little bit more flexibility signalled there too as to whether it's in August of next year or maybe later in the year, September, October. So one of the challenges in this exercise is that I'm not blaming Team New Zealand, they don't have certainty around that information either. So we're working through the process. I think parties are working in good faith, and yep, it's taking a bit longer than I think I would have liked, but it's probably more important to get it right so that it meets all of the needs of each of the parties, needs as against desires, because sometimes we'd prefer to have something, but it's not essential, and that's part of the negotiation, whether you give something up that might not be essential. When you first moved the motion in the 23rd of November, I've got the minutes here, what we said in item C there was we expressed a preference. So that's where we wanted to begin, but the word preference indicates that there had to be negotiations, and that might change as time went on.
Move confirmation of the minutes. Move confirmation of the minutes.
14th of December was actually the confirmation of the minutes of the 14th of December was for approving the Wynyard Basin.
Sorry,
Worship.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
The subject is confirmation of the minutes. We don't have an America's Cup report before us.
No, that's true. Look, I think we've I've given a bit of leeway to Councillor Fletcher because this is obviously an important issue to her, but I think we can confirm the minutes as being accurate.
But finally, Your Worship, can you confirm that you actually, and someone from your office has been in touch with all of the parties and that negotiations continue with all of the parties?
Yes, the negotiation is between the Crown, the Council and Emirates Team New Zealand. And
there are recent communications with all parties?
Yeah, absolutely. The officials are... it's being dealt with at an officials level rather than elected representatives level at this point. Okay, so I move, it's been moved by Councillor Darby, seconded by Councillor Cashmore, that we confirm the minutes of the 14th of December and the 21st of February as a true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Petitions, no petitions have been received.